Welcome back. Now, tonight on the Dialogue KE, we delve on the state of the economy. We've seen the state officers being proposed to, the salaries to be proposed to be increased by 14%. What does this mean to the hustlers? And regarding the Finance Bill 2023, Okiya Omtatah went to the courts, and the courts ordered that the Finance Bill do not take effect until the 5th of this month. Now, in studio to discuss on these matters, we have Eric Mukono, a political analyst and also a familiar face on this program. Karibu sana.
Asante.
And our newbie, Nerea Okech, a governance expert. Welcome to the studio.
It's my pleasure.
I guess before we begin on the discussion on the state of the economy, maybe you can just delve a bit on the ruling today by the courts to declare unconstitutional the 50 CASs.
Well,
Nerea,
I
what's your
mean,
take on that?
in my opinion, I think the courts have acted independently. That's number one.
Yeah.
And I expect the president to respect that decision. And I also expect the politicians that were being rewarded by those positions to respect that decision. Because I personally think that it's the politicians that need these positions, and the rewards have to go to politicians. But essentially, we need to figure out another way for the politics of this country to work, other than placing everybody who loses an election in the governance of the country. And Kenyans have said this numerous times, that we do not necessarily have the best cohort this time around. So the president needs to listen, and he needs to move on to the next level and run the country.
Yeah. Eric, do you think the president is going to obey the court orders? We've seen in the previous governments where the executive does not obey at times the court orders. Are we going to see the same replicated?
If history is anything to go by, then most likely I would want to give them a benefit of doubt, but I'm very skeptical about it. I don't think that the president is going to obey court orders, but I would want to let them know the same way they celebrated the same ruling on the BBI and on the hot air. I think they should embrace this ruling the same way. So I am asking the president and his team. I have seen one of the senators saying that the judiciary has gone rogue. I mean, it is unfortunate that when a ruling goes against you, the judiciary becomes rogue. But when it is on your side, and it is the judiciary rules in your favor, then everything is okay. I mean, we are just a free country. Let everyone do whatever they are doing independently without having other institutions and other arms of government coming in. So I asked the president to just accept and move on.
And move on.
Yes.
Okay, let's move on now to the next topic of discussion. And actually, you've seen the Salaries and Remuneration Commission propose a 14% pay rise to all state officers at the expense of the quote-unquote hustlers. I mean, what does this mean to us as a nation at this point in time?
Well, I think the country is angry and hungry, and the country is saying we cannot afford, to pay this. But I mean, to his credit, the president just about 2 days ago, said that he has put on hold the increment to state officers. So the only increment that takes effect in July would be for the junior civil servants below the level of the PS. But, that said, I am aware of the politics of this country, and I can tell Kenyans that it is coming. Once you take care of the critical mass, because, the civil servants are over 900,000. So you're looking at almost 1 million people who are going to be satisfied because you have cushioned them, against, the effects of the finance bill, so to speak. But, once you do that, then they will calm down. So I think it's a chess game. And I don't think it's going to end well for Kenyans, if you ask my opinion. Definitely, the increment to state officers is coming because they are the decision makers in this country. So they will hold the country hostage once they go through the hurdle of making sure the other civil servants are being paid. So I don't think we are winning there as Kenyans.
Before we get to you, Eric, let's just listen to what the president said regarding the SRC proposal.
The state officers, myself, my deputy, ministers, PSS, na wale wadosi wengine wa bunge, na wale wengine, sisi mambo yetu tungoje. Tafadhali. Hiyo mshahara itakwama hapo. Mimi nimeona watu wanasema mshahara ya kuna watu fulani, hapana. Hiyo mshahara ingoje hapo. Until I have instructed the SRC to give us international best practice, because we need to reduce the gap between all of us who work for the people of Kenya. We need to make sure that the gap between the person paid the least and the person paid the most is not too big, because we are all workers. It is not possible that the people at the top earn 100 times more than the people at the bottom. It's not right. Because we live in the same country, we buy the same food, we go to the same shop, we go to, I have told SRC there is an internationally accepted, it's called compression formula. Until they come back to me to tell me we meet that threshold, hii salaries yetu itangojea.
Eric, your reaction on that? Do you think the president has the powers to direct what SRC needs to do?
Kennedy, SRC is a constitutional body that is not answerable to any arm of government. And so I don't think SRC is actually doing what they are supposed to do. SRC is doing what they are mandated to do by the Constitution. And so the president has no powers to tell SRC as a commission to not give state officers the 14% increase. So I want to agree with Nerea that at the end of the day, we're going to see the 14% increase on the in the state officer above the cadre of the permanent secretary.
So eventually it's going to happen.
It's going to happen. It's just a way to try and appease the masses down here, the hustler nation, you know, and then eventually they'll then come and get their thing. Of course, it's going to go through the public participation, but there's not going to be anything different that's going to happen. It's going to happen.
Yeah, actually, yes. Nerea, you said that the mood of the country right now is angry regarding this. And we've come at a time whereby the finance bill has already passed. Kenyans are going to pay the tax on the housing fund. And the president has also proposed the NHIF. And then after all this, the president, the SRC that is, decides to increase the salaries of the senior state officers. I mean, is it a disservice to the many hustlers who elected them?
I mean, I think, you know, just going to a bit of the numbers, you know, in this country, I think the tax base in this country is strained. I mean, we are busting. Everybody is feeling the strain of it all. I mean, just recently, we filed taxes. 6.3 million Kenyans filed taxes. And against a population of 50 million, and even if you take out, you know, those who are unemployed and those who are below the age of majority, we still have a significant number. That is just under 30%, you know, people who are paying taxes in this country and shouldering the burden, you know, of this country. And I think, you know, when you look at that vis-a-vis, you know, the finance bill, I saw, you know, IPRA giving us the new rates, you know, for fuel, for petroleum products. So number one, there was a reduction in IDF, that is the import declaration fees. There was, you know, by about from 3.5 to 2.5. There was also a reduction, you know. But when you do not reduce it, even the railway development levy was reduced from 2% to 1.5%. But it doesn't come into effect because what we are dealing with is the imports that were done just before, you know, June the 14th. So Kenyans have to wait for another month. In Garissa, they are buying fuel, petrol, at 209 shillings. In Mombasa, it's about 192. How can Kenyans not be angry? Because once we increase the cost of fuel, what does that mean? I'm going to buy food more expensively. For the first time, people who have never reached out to me for help are calling me to ask me for help. They need to go to the hospital, they need to take their children to school, because everybody is strained. And I am strained alongside thousands of other Kenyans. So it becomes very difficult.
You're not alone.
I'm not alone. So what happens in the country is very simple. If I'm helping, there's black tax. One employed Kenyan takes care of up to 30 people. So if I've been supporting them, 5,000, 10,000 shillings every month, I'm not going to change my lifestyle. What I'm going to do, I'm going to cut off support to my relatives.
Exactly.
And that means they're going to suffer even more. So at some point, the president needs to sit down with his cabinet and think, talking about good governance, it's not just about tax. We need to balance. How do we raise enough revenue? Vis-a-vis, how do we stimulate the economy so that we build business?
Exactly.
Yeah, but if businesses are not growing, we don't have businesses growing because of overtaxation, because of barriers. You have somebody, being asked for all manner of licenses. That means businesses will close down. A friend of mine just says, only today, 5 women are saying they're moving. They're shipping out of Kenya. So the president needs to listen.
It was actually a top story today on the Daily Nation.
Yes.
How many youths actually live in the country
Thank you.
regarding the high cost of living in the country. I mean, we have seen the Kenya Kwanza government drove on the hustler narrative, to caution Kenyans from the tough economic times. But right now, they're actually cautioning themselves. The irony.
Kennedy, let me remind you something. Last week we sat here talking about demonstrations, on whether demonstrations are back.
Actually, they will be back on Friday.
And no. I just want to remind you something you seem to have forgotten. And you asked me a question whether these demonstrations would be peaceful. And the demonstrations were all about the finance bill and whatever the government and the Kenya Kwanza government has done. And I want to confirm you today, probably you never watched news the following day.
I was actually on news. So.
I want to confirm to you that we had a very peaceful deliberation at Kamukunji grounds.
No, but think about this. Think about this. A Kenyan who has no job. Youth unemployment is at 67%. That's against a national average of less than 13%.
Exactly.
So tell me this. That young person knows that they're being overtaxed. Anytime they buy bread, they buy milk. Anytime they board a matatu, everything is increased. And that person feels they need to go and demonstrate to show government that they need to be listened to.
Exactly.
And yet they have nothing to lose. Because people who have something to lose will be scared of going out there, will be scared of causing any chaos. So how can somebody be peaceful when they have nothing to lose? So that is for the government to think. The president needs to think. We have more people with nothing to lose in this country. I think that's a very sad fact. We need to look at how to remedy that situation, because that is a recipe for chaos. We are not going anywhere.
Actually, Kenyans are actually wondering, now where do we go next? We have the opposition, and many of the MPs have actually moved on to the government side. We also saw that during the voting of the finance bill. Now, last week we were discussing about the demonstrations. Do you think that's the only solution to the common mwananchi right now?
It is a solution in as much as it's a way to vent, in my opinion. Because when somebody is not listening, when you have said it is punitive, for you to bring a savings, quote unquote, for housing, and Kenyans were up in arms, and then you listen and say, okay, 3% is very high. Then you bring it back by making it a tax of 1.5%. So some people focus on the 1.5%, but they don't think that, what? This has now become a tax. It's no longer your own saving. You know, but even when you think about it, how long would it take for an ordinary Kenyan to save enough to buy houses? Real estate in Kenya is overpriced. So when we are talking burden, it's a burden literally everywhere. So those are the kind of people we are telling to be patient. Those are the kinds of people the government is telling that, you know what, we have actually eased the burden on production of food. So you should expect to feel better, you know. But by the time the season has turned and you are paying high prices on fuel, we are going to need to transport the maize from the farms.
Sure.
Yes.
Well, Eric, many Kenyans have argued that President William Ruto could have taken the easier route by getting more loans, by bringing about subsidies on products. But he's actually taking the harder route and taxing Kenyans, that he should be given time.
Looking at it, Kennedy, from an economic perspective, taking loans is not sustainable for any government. You know, borrowing is not sustainable for any government. And of course, on this I agree with him. And as well, subsidies are not sustainable for governments. But looking at it, the president needs to be sincere with Kenyans, whether really it is about not taking loans, because looking at the last 6 months, he has actually taken more loans compared to what the last year time like this. I mean, he's not being genuine with Kenyans, you know? He's absolutely not being genuine with Kenyans. But also to add on to what my sister Nerea has said here, that it is an opportunity, and going out there is an opportunity for Kenyans to let the government understand that yes, indeed, you have passed the finance bill, and there is very little we can do about it. But even with that, we need you to know that we are not happy. And also, again, the court is an opportunity, and going to the court is an opportunity to let the government know that as well, because you refuse to listen to us, we have an alternative to go to the courts. And the courts somehow, looking at the last few days, we have a very sober judiciary, we have a very independent judiciary, and they are going to caution us from some of these things. And hopefully, we're going to tame this Kenya Kwanza government.
Talking about taming the Kenya Kwanza government through the judiciary, we've seen Senator Okiya Omtatah going to court and actually getting court orders that the finance bill should not start being implemented. But we've seen EPRA go ahead and hike the fuel prices. What's your take on this?
I mean, as I said, I'll take you back.
Yeah.
Not only have they gone ahead to implement, they have also implemented, you know, a section of, you know, the levies that they were not supposed to. I mean,
True.
really, how angry and hungry will Kenyans get for the government to listen? I mean, credit to the president on, you know, giving concessions to Kenyans. When you say, I'm not going to increase our salaries, that's a good thing. But then Kenyans do not believe you. I think that's the problem.
Because actually,
Yes.
SRC say that the president cannot advise them.
Exactly. It's independent. And then again, you know, paying taxes is fine. You know, Kenyans pay taxes. I do not mind paying taxes as a Kenyan. But what I do mind is the fact that I do not see my taxes being used for the benefit of others who are not as privileged as I am to have a payslip. I think that's the biggest problem. So, President Ruto, Kenyans are telling you that they want you to listen, but they do not trust your people to deliver. The government is barely a year old. But think about it this way. You already have a huge scandal about importation of beans, cooking oil. So as Kenyans who are struggling with the prices of these basic commodities, we have ministers in office who are enriching themselves. And when you have scandals in the media of ministers buying homes of, over 100 million, so Kenyans are going to ask themselves, so do we put people in office so that they can benefit, their families and their friends and their relatives, or can they work for Kenyans? I think we do not mind. We can bear the burden. I'm amongst the 6.3 million Kenyans who are bearing the burden. but I don't mind if it's working. I mean, there are countries that have a higher tax rate, but why is it that in Kenya we seem to be, going back and forth? Case in point, NHIF. The president says it's 2.7%. That's coming. And looking at the Constitution of Parliament, it's going to pass. So it means he's going step by step. Yes. So it's like a pound of flesh every single day that he's taking from Kenyans. We saw the housing levy pass. So it's like he wants to get done with the one and move to the next step. NHIF just had a major crisis. People were being turned away from hospitals because they were not being given their remittance. So they just got it just a few weeks ago. But how do we know that the next one is coming? How can I trust that if I increase it to 2
It is surely going to come. We have
Yeah.
one somewhere.
It is coming. I mean, my worry is everything that Kenyans feel pain towards is coming.
Kennedy, let me try and put this into perspective for Kenyans to understand.
Yeah.
The increase of the fuel levy from 8% to 16% means that the cost of production for basic commodities, bread, maize flour, these very basic commodities increases. The cost of manufacturing of, say, things like, very basic things like medicine and all that also increases. The operational cost of an average home that needs cooking oil to cook, and some of these very basic needs also increases.
Yeah.
Again, I remind you, part of what I have been doing here for the last few weeks is that this government ran on the narrative of cushioning the hustler nation, the mama mboga and the mtu ya boda boda and mkokoteni, and that narrative was all over. We had it from the president, we had it from his deputy, the prime minister. But now what we are seeing them do is totally different. It's absolutely different. Let me just put it again into perspective, and so that you see how bad of a situation this is. We have employers in this nation who are supposed to contribute 1.5% tax for each and every of their employees. Take, for instance, an employer who has 100 employees and he has to contribute 1.5% for their housing scheme. Probably this is an employee who has already built in the village and they don't even need this house. An employee like Nerea who probably has a house.
I do.
And she's supposed to contribute the 1.5%.
Yeah.
I mean, what is going to happen to some of these businesses? They either lay off so that they can afford that. They either lay off or close down,
But you see, the Kenya Kwanza government have argued that they came into office when the coffers were empty. That has been the argument, and they're building from scratch, quote unquote. Do you think that they need just to be given time to actualize most of their agendas on their manifesto?
We have a very, we have a very sly, is it called sly or slime government? They lie to us on broad daylight. I mean, there's no way you can tell us that you came into office when the coffers were empty, yet a few days down the line or a few weeks, you have come and told us we have money to pay 50 CASs. A CAS takes home the same salary as a permanent secretary, which is around 780,000. In a year, the total wage bill of the CASs is around 590 million shillings.
Yeah.
In 4 years, when they are going to be in office, that's going to be around 1.8 billion. I mean, this is money that can be used to employ teachers. This is money that can be used to employ community workers. And then you come and tell us that you came in and found empty coffers, yet we have money, somewhere, somehow, we have money that can pay, miraculously, we have money that can pay 50 CASs. I mean, It is hard to believe. It is very hard to believe.
Is it a result of our political system? You have to reward your loyalists.
Let me tell you, the plain truth is that Kenya was never a hustler nation, as Kenya Kwanza put it during the campaign. That was a campaign gimmick.
So true.
And Kenyans need to learn to differentiate campaigns from reality. I think that's the biggest lessons Kenyans will learn. Those are some of the biggest lessons that we have as a country. And everybody is saying it. Essentially, look at, and they keep telling us every day. Now we have a prime cabinet secretary. Yes, with an office funded, with the spouse's office that's funded.
And fuel gas.
And, everything. And he keeps saying, I think he said one time that Kenyans need to tighten their belt, that they need to be given time, at least a year, to resolve every issue that they had. Forgetting that the president swore that once he puts the Bible down, then it's a new Kenya, it's new business, it's business unusual.
I think he needs to be reminded. Sorted. He thinks he's still having the Bible, so probably he needs to be, he got
You need to find that Bible. Clearly there's something missing on that Bible table. But, Kenyans are seriously saying, and the government is hearing, whether they are listening or not is another matter. But Kenyans are angry. You can tell every single day.
I can tell it from your face.
That Kenyans are saying that you have to change tact. As a government, you have to change tact. And when I sit here, I represent Kenyans. I represent lots of women. I happen to have been elected as the first Miss President in this country. So a lot of women who tell me that we are struggling.
So true.
I mean, so many chamas with the women. People are defaulting on loans. Go to SACCOs, people are defaulting because people have been fired. They cannot afford it. The minute you take off 10,000 shillings from somebody's payslip, that's a crisis.
So true.
Because already people are operating on the minimum 1/3, especially the civil servants. I don't even know, when you tell them that you're going to increase their salary as a priority, they have to know that they were operating on the 1/3 rule so that they don't go below 1/3 and continue to get loans, because Kenyans are surviving on loans. So essentially, even if you increase it, it's going to be swallowed by all these taxes that you have increased.
Nerea,
Yes.
As you conclude, because the time is not on our side, if you met the president today, now that you are the first Miss President,
Yeah.
I just had to bring that up.
Yeah.
What will you advise him regarding the situation, the economic situation in the country? What solution will you offer?
I think number one is we have a problem in the Ministry of Trade, so fire the guy and get somebody who can actually, not cut deals using Kenyan's time and money. Yes, for me, that's the first thing I would tell him. And then number two, rein in on your CSS. Because it's not a life of luxury. They're not on holiday. They came to work. Yes, because the president and even the deputy president is on record as reporting to the office at 5 a.m. I mean, but when you report to the office at 5 a.m. and Kenyans are not seeing a difference, when you report at 5 a.m., so what are we saying? That we need to put you on a performance improvement plan as Kenyans because you work for us. So that's what I'm telling you, Mr. President. You're on a PIP, effective today. Yeah, that's it.
Eric,
Yes.
The courts.
You don't want to allow me to address the president. it's a
You don't have the privilege.
It's an
Eric.
opportunity to address
You do
the
not have the
president.
privilege.
Are the solutions and the hopes of Kenyans now on the courts? Are we going to see the finance bill reversed?
As I have told you, we have, looking at history, Kennedy, we have governments that don't obey court orders, and we have seen it from what EPRA has done. EPRA is just a bait just to see what the reaction is going to be. And so probably it's going to give hopes to Kenyans a bit that the courts are protecting us. But going a few weeks down the line, you'll see it from your payslip. you are actually going to it's very unlikely.
Okay,
that
now
the
your
government,
opportunity now to address the
here it is, Mr. President. It's very unfortunate, but also a very fortunate moment that I am getting to address you. You need to listen to Kenyans. The same way that you're coming on ground during the campaigns and talking to hustlers and asking, situshughulikie huyu mama mboga, situshughulikie huyu mtu wa bodaboda kwanza. And then the mama mboga ended up being the CASS and the prime cabinet secretary. Now you need to come back and we need to tell you the truth. Because people who are around you are actually lying to you.
Yeah.
People who are around you are there to feed their stomachs and to feed themselves and make sure that their lives are good.
Perfect.
So I actually just want to ask you, simple, just come on the ground yourself and listen to Kenyans and what Kenyans are saying, and get to have a glimpse of what Kenyans are going through, a glimpse and a feel of what Kenyans are going through. Because the situation out here is bad. It's very bad. It's very bad.
The situation is very bad. You know, we've talked about a lot of problems, you know, affecting our countries and, our country, and you've offered solutions. Is there any hope?
Well, I think there's hope. I mean, from my accounting background, I think the only thing that the president needs to do with his team is to expand the tax base. I mean, I'm happy about, KRA looking at, expanding it using, automation. I know there's a tax on gambling when you place a bet, when you win. I mean, they're doing that. And then, of course, I know about this, data agreement, data exchange kind of agreement with Safaricom that allows them to anybody who is running a business with a pay bill. I mean, those are very good steps. And those are very positive things, that are happening in the country. But then again, that base is still not large enough. Because if people are not happy about the way their taxes are being managed, what they're going to do is to avoid it. So let's stimulate the economy so that, and people are happy enough not to avoid tax, so that we can expand the base and then ease the burden on these 6.3 million Kenyans who have filed their returns, and of course up to about 5 million who did not file, because possibly they didn't have anything to file.
So
and even of the 6.3 million, we have the nil filers, because the government will still charge you 2,000 shillings if you do not file. I mean, some of these things are ridiculous. We have to look at all these, penalties that come from Kenya Revenue Authority. Are they making money? And then the biggest issue is the government needs to find the missing traders, those people who are coming for exemptions when they do not actually trade. They are costing us a lot of money when they are, when they buy zero-rated inputs, and yet they are not selling. So that means that they are taking a huge chunk of money. So I'm glad KRA is taking steps to look at all that. So all this will bring revenue back into the coffer. So those are solutions that are there, but we can enhance them and expand them. Yes, and I am happy with that. But let us now still continue sealing the loopholes so that we see our money working. I'm willing to pay 40% tax if I'm very sure I'm going to be on a neat road, a smooth one. I'm going to have piped water. It's going to be safe. I mean, all that. I have security. I don't have to, look behind my back every time I'm walking in town. So thank you very much.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, Eric, your sentiments, any hope?
My sister Nerea has talked from accounting perspective. Allow me to talk from a political perspective.
Yeah, conclude, yeah.
I think the president needs to get the right people around him, and people who are going to advise him the right way. If that is sorted, if he gets, just like my sister Nerea said, if we get Moses Kuria out of that and just ask him, we build him a home in Gatundu and ask him to rest, he has done enough. Yeah. I think we just need the right people around him.
How about the common mwananchi?
The common mwananchi, there is hope for the common mwananchi. If we get our policies right, if we get the members of parliament make laws that are going to benefit the mwananchi and not benefit the government, then we will be at a point where the mwananchi can be proud of his country, Yeah.
I guess that's a very good point to end this conversation right here on the Dialogue KE. At least for once you've had gender balance.
Good for you.
Yeah, thank you so much
I am known to carry seats to tables where there are no women.
Hey.
So good for you.
Asante sana,
Yes.
Mr. President, for coming through. And Eric, a familiar face on the Dialogue KE.
I am also
Yeah.
glad to Miss President.
I guess that's a very good point to end it there. Thank you so much for watching Newswatch and the Dialogue KE. On behalf of the whole team that made this broadcast a success, have yourselves a blessed night. My name is Kennedy Kimani, and Boniface Muredi has been the sign language interpreter.